Hi everybody, this is Judy at Judy in the Kitchen. I've got some tips and ideas for using acorn squash. Now I've got one here in front of me, and obviously this is not cut. But if you're going to stuff an acorn squash or roast it and you want to do it by the halves, let's say you've cut it across this way, obviously that is rounded, and if you want the skin side down, the thing might have a tendency to roll. So one way to stop it from rolling is to cut a small amount off of the bottom edge, the bottom side there that it's going to lay on, and then it will have a flattened area so that you can lay it on your baking sheet like this and it won't roll around. And that will help you if you want to stuff it and bake it while it's stuffed. That'll keep it from rolling around. Now you can roast the seeds of an acorn squash just like you could roast the seeds of a pumpkin. You can do it in the very same way, and I've got actually a couple ways to do it. One way would be, obviously you want to cut it, remove those seeds, wash them really well to get the strings off of them, and then dry them up a bit. Then one way, you could lightly coat them with oil and then spread them on a foil or a parchment paper lined baking sheet. Sprinkle them with your seasonings of choice. Salt is a common one to use. You could use other seasonings if you like, and then you can roast it at 300 degrees until they're toasted and fragrant. Toss them every 20 minutes or so, and it might take up to an hour for them to really brown and toast well. Another way to roast acorn squash seeds, again, would be to cut your squash, scoop out the seeds, and then clean those seeds really well to get the strings and so forth off of them. Then you can just spread those washed seeds out on a dry baking sheet, no oil. Sprinkle them with whatever seasoning you want, some salt, chili, pepper, chili powder, whatever you want to season them with. Put them in a 350 degree oven and allow them to roast or toast until they are lightly browned. You want to go in there periodically and stir them up, and sometimes just give the pan a little shake like this as they start to dry so that you'll keep them in a single layer and not allow the bottoms to burn. So you want to watch them carefully, and that at 350 might take about a half an hour to do. And it may also depend upon how many are on the pan. Yeah, there's not going to be a whole lot of seeds in an acorn squash versus like a pumpkin. So it may not take you all that long to do. Now one tip here is that acorn squash is pretty mild in flavor. When you cut into it, if you notice that the flesh is more orangey looking, then you'll know that it is sweeter in flavor. If it's on the pale side, it won't be as sweet as the other. Now, if you like to get creative in the kitchen, one interesting way is you could take some roasted, mashed acorn squash and add it into ravioli, or make lasagna and use it as part of the filling between the noodle layers. You could also try adding cooked acorn squash to soup, especially a milk-based soup. It would act like a thickener and it would make the soup creamy, and it'll add a little bit of a sweet flavor to it as well. Here's an interesting idea that one mother found was very kid-tested and approved way to enjoy acorn squash. She cut the squash in half lengthwise, removed the seeds and the strings, put it cut side down on a parchment paper lined baking dish, baked it at about 375 to 400 or so until a knife could be inserted easily through the squash, roasting it about 30 minutes or so. Then she took the squash out of the oven, turned it cut side up, added a little bit of fat of her choice, no more than about a tablespoon. It could be coconut oil, butter, or some other kind of fat that you like. And then she added a tablespoon or so of apricot preserves into the cavity of each half. Then she returned the squash to the oven and broiled it until the fat was completely melted and the squash halves were lightly browned. That does sound like something a child would like, and a lot of adults as well. For an easy side dish with a little bit of a different twist to it, you could mash or puree some cooked acorn squash with the seasonings of your choice. It could be sage or thyme, or add a sweetener of your choice like maple syrup, brown sugar, or even apple juice or apple cider, and then a dash of some complementary spice to that, like a cinnamon, nutmeg, or even allspice, and that would make it a delicious side dish. Just for the record, the skin of acorn squash actually is edible. Whether you want to eat it or not is certainly up to you. When you boil it with the skin on, the skin is going to become more tender and more palatable than if you try to eat the skin after the squash was roasted in the oven. In that case, it might be pretty tough. When the squash is cooked, no matter how you cook it, the flesh can easily be removed from the peel, so you can go either way. I do hope this helps you out. Feel free to share some other ideas if you have some below. Other people would benefit from that as well. This is Judi at Judi in the Kitchen. Bye for now.